Guaranteed you'll be missing me in the nighttime. Hello and welcome to Conversations with Rev G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, Rev G, and I'm here every Monday night on WEMS radio from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., bringing you spiritual conversations with people from all walks of life, careers, artists, all types of creatives, spiritual people, ministers, people from just many, many different walks of life. And we're here to talk about spirituality, but we also talk about current events and things that are happening in the world. The thing we do here is try to support you in creating a spiritual toolkit or creating practices that can support you whenever you need them to. I can also be found on social media. Every day you can find me as Rev Grenetta on Instagram and on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason, bringing you inspirational quotes and supporting you. My goal is to support you in finding joy. And in finding that joy, I hope that you could live your best life with grace and ease. And so many things are going on now, and there's just so much that we can talk about and that we can look at as a part of how we can function in this world today. So my guests, when they come on, they talk about the things that they use and they talk about how their spiritual tools support them. So today I have a really, really, really special guest, and I'm excited about having her on. My guest tonight is Radiance Dangerfield. And Radiance is an HR professional. She also works with personal development as an HR professional, learning and personal development. She's an executive coach. She has some great, great mindfulness practices that she could share with us. And I'm excited to have her here tonight. Radiance, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rev G.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, introduce yourself. I gave all your titles and everything, but introduce yourself.
I think you covered it. My name is Radiance Dangerfield. I am a learning and development professional. I also have my own coaching business called My Curated Career. I created that to help ambitious professionals really curate the career they desire. I'm a certified executive coach, and I am a spiritual seeker. So I think that about sums it up.
That's really good. I'm excited to have you here because as an HR professional and working in corporate America at this time, right, I'm interested to talk about what your experiences are there as a young Black woman and navigating corporate America and some of the experiences that you've had there. Can you talk about that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly been a journey to get to where I am now. I actually started out as a high school teacher for about 7 years. And I got to a point where I realized if I wanted to grow in a different way professionally, if I wanted to grow financially, I needed to find another job, right? And I've always loved teaching others, helping others achieve their goals. And so that's when I started looking into learning and development and corporate training. And so my first job in the corporate world, it felt like moving to a different planet because it was such a different environment than what I was used to. I went to school to be a teacher. In the classroom, you're not necessarily talking about, profit and loss, and you're not talking about like financial spreadsheets, et cetera. So I didn't really have that business acumen. And so when
Okay.
I went to the corporate world, I really felt like I was kind of behind some of my peers that straight out of college started working in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first job was at a place where outside of teaching,
Mm-hmm.
where, to be honest, it was a good old boys club.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it was a good old boys club, and it was difficult for me to navigate that because, like I said, I was a career changer and I didn't have the professional confidence. I felt like I was
Mm-hmm.
behind because I started out as a teacher. And so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that professional confidence to really know what I brought to the table because I
Mm-hmm.
was starting out and I was still learning. And, I was able to work my way up in that job to be from a learning specialist to a manager. But the higher I got, the more I started to realize that my value was never going to be seen there. Right. And I wasn't going to be appreciated there. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I started making the decision to leave. And I will tell you an example of that really crystallized it for me of
Mm-hmm.
many.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a project where I was supposed to be teaching the leaders of the company about succession planning and
Okay.
how do we grow our future leaders. And we had a new and different way that we were approaching it, looking at critical roles that were hard to find in the marketplace. And
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a roadshow. I'd done all this research. I was really excited. And, I went through all of the different divisions and it went pretty well until I got to one division in particular. It was the
Mm-hmm.
largest division in the company. And that leader didn't let me get through the second slide before he before he started going on about how, in his mind, he felt that the process I was teaching them was going to take away a leadership program that he was very passionate about. And
Okay.
that wasn't the case, right? So I had
Mm-hmm.
other people in the room, another woman in the room that tried to speak up and kind of explain. And he just kind of kept getting riled up and was just like, I'll put my badge on the table before we shut down this program. And we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to explain to him we're not doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
then he looks at my coworker, my peer, a white male, and he says, "Well, what do you think?" And
Okay.
he wasn't the presenter.
Right.
He wasn't,
Okay.
and I knew that he did not have that knowledge because he actually used to report to me in that company. And
Right.
so that just let me know that, when you walk in the room, sometimes you can be exceptionally prepared, you can be qualified. And unfortunately, sometimes there are people that just aren't going to listen to you, or you have to prove your
Yeah.
qualification. And there are other people that walk in the room and they automatically assume they have a
Mm-hmm.
certain knowledge set. So,
Yeah.
that was a very difficult experience. And when I left that company, I
Mm-hmm.
told myself, I'm going to go to a place that really values me. And when I interview, I'm going to ask pointed questions. I'm going to look at the leadership team. I'm going to look for diversity. And I was
Mm-hmm.
really blessed to be able to go to a company that had a lot of diverse representation throughout the company, leadership team and beyond. And when
Mm-hmm.
I got there, I was able to flourish and I was able to really rebuild my confidence. So it
Mm-hmm.
can be difficult.
That,
It can be
yeah,
difficult.
that's interesting because, it brings to mind that is your first story, right? I'm having
Hmm.
like a conflict here, right? How can I help you? Hello? Hold on one second. It's always something that comes up. Doggy.
Okay.
All right. I'm so sorry about that. Where I wanted to go to next was in thinking about that as your first experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how from there to now, right? Can you
Hmm.
talk about the experiences that you're having now? How from that, you know, the things that you've taken from that experience to be where you are now?
Yeah. So what I took from that, even before I took that job after that, when I started interviewing and
Mm-hmm.
people started commenting like, wow, you did this, you did that, you did great work. It was kind of like being in like in a container. I wasn't able to see my worth. I wasn't able to see kind of my value. So what I really
Mm-hmm.
took from that was the first person that has to believe in yourself is you, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
had to move differently because the energy that I took to different assignments at those companies after that one was proving myself. Like, I'm going to do all
Mm-hmm.
the research. I'm going to, know all the things. I'm going to be the most prepared. They're never going to be able to say anything. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be exhausting. That could
Yeah.
be really exhausting, you know?
Mhm.
So I had to kind of get to a place where I said to myself, you know, okay, Radiance, you got the degree, you've got all these certificates to validate you, right? You
Mhm.
have all of
Mhm.
these experiences, and you need to come from a place of I can make an impact and I can have contribution. And so
Mhm.
now my experience is very different because, like I said before, I was very intentional about the companies that I
Mhm.
went to, the people that I
Mhm.
worked for, and
Mhm.
I have not experienced that degree of,
Mhm.
I would say, kind of discrimination and microaggression. I mean, there's always some sprinkled here and there, but it's a
Mhm.
different experience for me now. That being said, you know, it still exists. You know, these
No.
companies have a lot of work to do.
Mhm.
You know, the buzz right now is having DEI professionals and
Mhm.
unconscious bias, you know, training, anti-racism training, putting
Mhm.
together all these plans, and that's wonderful. But, you know, we need to really see those things have also existed before. So
Right.
now they're a
Absolutely.
priority, right? They're a
Mhm. Mhm.
priority. And we have to see whether or not, you know, the leaders of this company will follow through to make these culture changes, because these are going to be some deep changes that people have to make in order to get down to that employee to employee level where
Right.
a lot
You
of those
know,
microaggressions happen, you
yeah,
know?
it reminds me that we've been there, we've done that before,
Hmm.
right? And so at
Yeah,
this point, we really have to make sure actions are taken. Because like
absolutely.
I could say to you, okay, Ray, I know you recently got a job during COVID, which is like, wow,
Hmm.
people say, oh, how do you get jobs and how do you do that? But from my experience, when you go into these companies, do you get the same um, opportunities as your other counterparts because you
Hmm.
are a minority? Are they setting you up to have sponsors and champions and who's grooming you for the next level? Those were some of the things that I saw not necessarily happening in
Right.
those spaces, right?
Hmm.
Do you have a champion, or how have you been able to navigate to even get to the management levels that you've gotten?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I haven't had a formalized champion or mentor or sponsor, but I've been blessed to build relationships with people within the company, outside the company, that really help me learn how to navigate, help me learn how to advocate for myself, help me
Mhm,
learn how to think about my career differently. So
mhm,
I've had those people, whether they were, you know, they've been of all different races and genders that have been
mhm.
able to help me pull through. So I haven't been through a formalized program for that. I'm usually the one behind the scenes creating those programs, you know.
So you're like making sure they
Yeah,
happen, right? Right?
yeah, that's usually my role. I'm creating the programs for everyone else. You know, like in
Mhm,
HR, it's a lot of it is like, you know, the shoemaker's kids never get shoes. So a lot of
mhm,
times we're pouring into and investing in other people. But I know for myself, whenever I design a program, I always have that lens in mind. You know, how can I make sure we have diverse representation and people are getting access to it? And I can say for my current company, and nothing I say here is a reflection of that company. I
mhm,
definitely have seen a lot of activity, a lot of action behind the words, and a lot of programs being created to make sure that they are building out their diversity pipeline and that they're
mhm.
supporting, you know, diverse employees in the organization.
So programs, I mean, actively recruiting minorities. Okay, and that kind of thing, because it always comes to mind for me when I was in corporate America, there was always committees, right? And they will
Yeah.
put you on a committee, right? And then you're
Hmm.
on the diversity committee, and then you look around and like what actions, what really happened, what came out of being on
Right.
the
Yeah.
diversity committee, and I think it's time when I look at it, it's like I'm looking to say what actively are you doing to
Hmm.
support getting us in those spaces, right? And you know what came up? I
Hmm.
think we were talking to a friend about that has a law firm and hiring minorities, and
Hmm.
what we talked about was the as a smaller company, also the experience of
Yeah.
that you bring in if you don't hire like the top or the back,
Hmm.
and not having that opportunity to be a part of it because we're just trying to look to integrate people into corporate America. In
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, access. I think that's really what you're talking about,
yeah,
right? Access and exposure, because we know that what most leadership roles look like, what most executives look like, and they don't always, they're not. It's not always diverse, right? It's
right,
mostly white males in those positions, and it is
exactly.
a natural human behavior to gravitate towards people that look like you or think like you. And that's why a lot of this unconscious bias training is so important, because it's not about whether you're a good or bad person, right?
Mhm,
Our
mhm,
brain naturally works in certain ways. It's about having that awareness when you're making decisions to know whether or not you're, having bias, right? I've heard people say, like, you have interviews, right? I've heard people in HR say, "Oh, yeah, I really like that person because she reminds me of myself when I was younger." Well, that's not
mhm.
how we should be making decisions
Right,
when
right, right,
hiring people, like,
mhm,
we need to
mhm,
be hiring them on their merit and, their ability to contribute to the company. But it happens. So,
mhm,
I'm glad that we have a spotlight.
mhm.
This work has been done before. People have been trying to do this work before.
That's
So I'm glad that there's a spotlight, and that there, in some companies, I can only speak for mine, but in some
mhm,
companies that leadership is behind it. And that's really where it starts many times, where leadership
mhm,
makes it a priority for people to integrate it all across the board, whether you're selecting people for high potential leadership development programs, or it's looking at your hiring practices, or looking at your talent pipeline and who the next generation of leaders will be.
mhm,
It needs to be kind of integrated across all of those processes.
mhm. And it's interesting because I know that you're a millennial, right? And you go into these companies in these spaces. Talk a little bit about your experience with walking into intergenerational spaces.
I can't, I honestly can't say that I've had like a negative or a positive experience in terms of being a millennial. I'm like
Mhm.
an older millennial. I'm like right on the cusp.
Okay, yeah, the awful
I'm right
part.
on the cusp. But
Mhm,
I don't feel like I've really had any challenges navigating that. I think that,
mhm,
I've been able to interact well with people of different ages, and I haven't felt like people dismiss me because of
mhm,
my age.
mhm,
So, I haven't had that experience.
mhm. I seem to be getting an echo, and I'm not sure where it's coming from. Um, so the next thing I thought about as we were speaking was that you are an executive coach.
Hmm.
And I know you have your other coaching business too. How did you get to become an executive coach? What was
Yeah.
the plan for that?
It was something that had been in my mind maybe a couple of years after I transitioned into the corporate world. I just was really fascinated with the coaching process. I
Mhm,
liked that it focused on helping people think for themselves, helping people build awareness, helping people look at things differently, and helping people achieve their goals. And initially, that confidence thing came up again. I felt like,
mhm,
well, maybe I can't be a coach right now. Every coach that I see, or every executive coach that I see is, is older, is male, is white. So that did come into play. Like, who am I to be giving people advice, which is what I thought coaching was right at the time.
mhm,
But
mhm,
it kept coming back to me. Like, I kept looking into coaching programs and then thinking, I can't do it. And so about two companies ago, I brought in a coaching program where we hired external executive coaches to come in and coach our leaders. And
okay.
I ended up building a really good relationship with one of the coaches, Dan Zecca. He's actually my coach to this day, and someone I call a friend. And I
Mhm,
remember asking him, how do you be a coach? Because I don't think I can be one. And he's like, well, why do you think you can't be one? And he's just like, he's like, why? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm young and this, that, and the other. And he's like, really, to be a good coach, you just have to have a passion for helping people and a curiosity about people. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking to myself, well, why not me? Just, go and see if you could take a coaching program. And once you try it, then you can determine whether you'll be good or not. Then you can determine whether people will accept you or not. So I
Mm-hmm.
went and I convinced my boss to let me go to a coaching program. So that we could save on some costs because external coaches were a lot of money. So I'm like, if you pay
Okay.
this, I'll be able to save
Mm-hmm.
us money here. You'll get some ROI. And I went to the
Mm-hmm.
College of Executive Coaching and
Mm-hmm.
worked through to receive their certificate. And I'm still working to get my ICF coaching certification. That's my next goal. But I do have a certificate from College of Executive Coaching.
Mm-hmm. I know we had talked about, we're going to shift to talk about some of your spiritual practices. And I know we had talked about how you moved into being a Reiki practitioner. So, guys,
Yeah.
she's a Reiki practitioner, a mindfulness enthusiast, and she's a seeker, right? That's what she said. But talk about how you moved into these practices.
Yeah. Well, it started with going through a personal situation that really just caused me a lot of stress and caused me a lot of pain and, caused me to kind of look at how I got there, right?
Mm, okay.
And, when I look back during that time period, I would say over those years, I was dealing with a lot of personal, issues I had. My father was ill and dealing with, certain situations. And, we
Mhm,
had different things going on with family and, my personal life. And it just kind of started continuing to like build and build without me realizing it. Right. And I just kind of kept pushing through because that's what you do. I didn't grow up learning, techniques to manage stress, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
so one day at a job health fair, I went to get my blood pressure taken, and the lady like took my blood pressure, and then she kind of started looking a little shook, and
mhm,
she like her hand was shaking a little bit. She's like, "Well,
mhm,
is your blood pressure normally this high?" And I was like, "No, like I have a clean bill of health." And she was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna try the other arm." And she
mhm,
took it and she like still kind of was looking a little,
mhm,
nervous, like went to get her supervisor. I'm like, can you tell me what's going on here?
mhm. Right,
And so
make it.
she came back and gave me a yellow sheet of paper saying that I have really high blood pressure and I need to see my doctor ASAP. So I went
Oh,
to my doctor. She told me I had high blood pressure. And,
mm,
I was really sad hearing that because at that time I was working out, I was eating right. And I was just like, well, why now? It was like kind of the first time I felt like my mortality. I'd never been sick. Um,
mhm,
so she put me on medication and she was like, well, it just could be genetics. And just take the medication and, cut out the salt. Okay, fine. So 2 days later, I'm walking home from work and I start feeling lightheaded. And I think to myself, this is probably the blood pressure. So I go
mhm,
into the local grocery store and take my blood pressure. And it was about like 208 over one something, like 112, just
mhm.
stroke level. I
Right.
remember seeing like, the big red triangle with the exclamation point, and they're
Mhm,
like, you need to see a medical professional. And I remember
mhm,
thinking like, I can't freak out. I need to,
mhm.
because I could stroke out. And I ended up in the
Oh,
emergency room that evening, and they weren't able to tell me what was going on. They just
mm,
said, well, just keep taking your medication. And I purchased a blood pressure machine, took my medication, cut all the salt out my diet, and a couple days, later, maybe a week later, nothing was changing. And I remember
okay.
calling my mother, just feeling so stressed and sad, like, Mom, I don't know what else to do. Like, I'm
Mhm,
nervous, and I don't know why it spiked so high that day. And she
mhm,
ended up praying with me because my mom is a very religious person. I grew up in the AME church. And then
mhm,
after we prayed, my mom always taught me about that still small voice within you, right? And that's
mhm,
God
mhm,
speaking to you. So I heard a still small voice say, you need to meditate. And I was just
mm,
like, okay, right? So I just hopped on YouTube, found a meditation, meditated, and I promise that afternoon, my blood pressure was finally down to 120 over 80 that afternoon.
mhm,
And
mhm,
as I continued my meditation practice, I started realizing like it was stress. I was burned
mhm.
out and
Okay.
my resources were depleted.
Mm-hmm.
I thought because when I would get frustrated or upset at a situation, I wasn't yelling or screaming or, acting wild. I thought I was okay with handling my stress. But
Oh, okay.
your body knows, right? When you have
Mm-hmm.
emotions and thoughts, it impacts your body, it impacts your biochemistry, impacts your brain, your neural networks, and it slowly starts. It's almost like you're sitting in it with a car in park, with your foot pressing down on the gas pedal, and it will
Mm-hmm.
wear you down eventually
Mm-hmm.
if you don't handle it. So I went to Reiki because I was meditating frequently. I wanted to deepen my meditation practice, and I was doing a lot of exercises to also deepen my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw an ad online about Reiki, and I was like, I felt in my spirit, I'm like, you need to do this. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know what it was. I was just like, okay.
Because I was going to say, I wonder if a lot of it's interesting
I said, you
because
know
a
what?
lot of people don't know what it is.
Yeah,
Right? They really
yeah. But that personal situation, that was a powerful lesson in intuition. So I was like, you know what? From here on out, I'm going to be following my intuition. So I said, okay, you want me to take this class? I'm going to take this class. I have learned my lesson. I don't want to learn my lesson the hard way anymore. I took the class, and Reiki stands for universal or spiritual energy, if you translate it, or the energy of everything. And it's really all about, if you become a Reiki practitioner, you become attuned. And they believe that if you think of your crown chakra, the attunement opens your crown chakra wider so that the energy of the universe can flow through you to the person that you're applying Reiki to, whether it is yourself or another person. So it's the laying of the hands to balance energy and to, flow that universal life force energy through the practitioner and
Mhm.
through the person that you're performing Reiki on.
Mhm. Yeah, I get Reiki and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
That I was led to it for relaxation, for
Hmm.
body, for everything, and I still get Reiki, and it's really powerful as
Is.
one of the practices, holistic
Yeah.
practices that I do. What kind of mindfulness things are you working on?
So for me, mindfulness is both a state of mind or a way of living and a way of meditating.
Mhm,
So when I meditate, if I do mindfulness meditation, I'll do maybe formal meditations like a body scan,
mhm,
check in with my body, or I'll
mhm,
do some type of breath work. I did
mhm.
breath work before I came on here because I was a little nervous, and there's
I
certain
know.
ways that you can breathe to actually activate the relaxation response in your brain so you can settle your nervous system. So I was doing a little bit of that. But I also do try to make sure that I use mindfulness to check in with myself because I feel like I honestly feel like I was so blind to my emotions. I didn't have a relationship with my emotions and with my body before meditation.
Mhm,
And that's why I was able to get to that point where, like, I was burned out. I was in that ER room, at 3 a.m. trying to figure out why. And so now, if I feel frustrated, if I feel angry, I'll stop and check in with myself. I'll make note of where I feel it in my body. I'll
mhm,
make note of, my internal, my mental chatter, right? And
mhm.
where is this tension sitting within me? And then I'll try to use the breath to kind of work through it.
The breath, I like that because it's important. We use the breath all the time, but sometimes we don't
Yes,
recognize the importance of it. And everything that we do, if we just stop and breathe for a moment, we can
yes,
shift. And it
yes,
changes the dynamics of everything that we do just with the breath. So I like the breath work that we
yeah,
do. Even to sing, I love to sing, and it's all about breathing too. You have to learn how to breathe. So it's so much a part of everything that we do, and we just take it for granted. We're just breathing here, right?
yeah, yeah. When you learn this stuff, it's like, man, the breath is so powerful. Like, it's such a powerful tool, if for nothing else, to just simply keep you in the moment,
Yeah,
and to connect
absolutely.
you to the moment. because we are on autopilot so many times. We go through, you may be driving to work. Not many people are doing that now, but when you drove to work, you might drive and look up and like, how did I get here?
Right,
Like
right. I
you
know,
scrolling on
right,
TikTok, you know what I mean? Like an hour passed. How did we get here? And,
right,
there's some studies that say that about 50% of our life, we're thinking about the past or the future,
right.
but they don't exist. They are not
Exactly,
here.
right.
Our
Exactly.
life is this very moment now. And part of being happy and part of being balanced is being fully immersed in the current moment of whatever you're doing, fully
Exactly.
focused on that connection, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're smelling, what you're saying, the energy between you and that other person. So that's the beauty of mindfulness for me.
Yeah, me too. Because when I think about being present, it's like in this moment, all is well. When you stop
Yeah.
in the moment of being present, all is well. If
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking about the future, then something wasn't right there. Or if you're trying to go the past or going into
Yeah.
the future, right? But in the very
Mm-hmm.
moment, if you can just stop, all is well in this moment.
Absolutely.
So practicing being present is another great, I call it spiritual practice also.
Yes.
Practicing
Yes.
present to this moment. Another thing too in being present is watching the thoughts. What thoughts are you keeping, right?
Yeah.
Because the thoughts are things the thoughts create, right? And so
Absolutely.
our minds are just running around like you said, you're on autopilot. What are
Yeah.
you not really thinking about what you're doing because you're not present? Every day you pick up your cup, you pick up your keys, you go get in your car, you drive the same way, and then all of a
Right.
sudden you're at work. What were you doing in those moments, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even, sometimes even to the point where you might want to go somewhere else and you find yourself on the road going like to the same, another place. Because
Yeah.
you're so familiar with the way we do things. So I like that idea.
Absolutely.
Talk about your spiritual journey. I know you mentioned that you grew up in the church. Talk about,
Yeah.
how you've gotten to this place of spirituality, I would call it.
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up in the church. I grew up in an AME church, African Methodist Episcopal. We were in there Sunday, sometimes during the week, Bible study, all the time. We were in the church. And I got to maybe around the age of 18, I started questioning things. That's really that
Mhm.
part of your life where you start doing that. And I remember being in Sunday school one day and they were saying that, if you don't know Jesus, then, you're not going to be saved. I was like, so does that mean that, folks that aren't Christian are going to hell?
No,
And like,
right.
is that what that means? And, so me and my Sunday school teacher, we had a discussion and he was like, well, that's why we have missionaries. And I'm like, well, what if you don't reach them? Like, I just couldn't believe that if we have an all-knowing, vast, omnipotent God,
Mhm.
that it's just one path to God. Like, I just can't believe that.
Right.
And I got a little disillusioned and I decided I was like, I can't go to church anymore because it's not doing anything for me and I'm not getting the answers. And
Mhm.
so I started just seeking. I started looking at different spiritual practices. I took a class in college. I learned about Judaism, Islam, Hinduism.
Mhm.
I started reading about different religions, about Rastafarianism even. I
Mhm.
started visiting different types of religious, places. I used to go to the Self-Realization Fellowship, started
Mhm.
by Paramahansa Yogananda. And
Mhm.
that was when I first got introduced to meditation. And what I
Mhm.
really liked about that practice was they would have a theme. So let's say the theme was like forgiveness and they
Mhm.
would read from the Bible. They'd read from the Bhagavad Gita. They'd read
Mhm.
from, the Quran. They'd read from Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings. And so you could see just the diversity of thought around that one universal concept. And then we would meditate on that. And the energy in there was just like really intense.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I didn't stay with that. I kind of, as I got in my 20s, I just went, a different way. And as I
Mhm.
was going through different things, like I did want to have a spiritual practice, but I didn't know where to go, what to do. And there were
Mhm.
times where I actually used to pray. I used to pray for like a spiritual mentor or somebody to get me connected, because I didn't really feel like, I felt like I was kind of floating in the wind in that respect in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the spiritual mentor was going to be high blood pressure and, you know,
Like
a
life
really bad breakup, you gotta be careful what you pray for.
right. It wasn't like
I
a
felt like this really nice person come and just take me under their wing. But life was my spiritual mentor. So,
that's pretty cool, right? I can see it, right.
yeah. Right now, I don't subscribe to a particular religion, but I do, I meditate, I pray, I do things so that I can feel closer to God. I feel like God is within all of us. And so meditation for me is just being quiet enough to feel that energy in me and, opening up my heart and my mind and my spirit to hear, whatever is trying to be communicated to me, wherever, I need to go or how I need to move.
Right. I like that because I always talk about my inner guides, right? And it reminds me to stay in tune, to know what to do and to follow that intuition or inner voice
Yeah.
that we call it that. I know that we wanted to talk a little bit about mental health because I was excited when you told me about a group. We talked about mental health for Black. And can you tell a little bit about your journey with mental health and what you're doing now to support yourself?
Yeah. I am a person that deals with anxiety and depression. I've dealt with that for a significant part of my life. A lot of it is related to some, trauma that I experienced when I was younger. We had, addiction issues in my family. We had different, situations that had an impact on me. And it took me a really long time to get to therapy because, this awakening that we're seeing now in the Black community, which I love, which is all about being open about mental health, not having the shame, being connected to therapists. That just wasn't the case when I was growing up, right? And so those are things that I had to, I built coping mechanisms that probably weren't the best, right? I built defense mechanisms that was, kind of like like almost like a porcupine, like just, keeping people away from me. And when I went to finally decide to go to therapy, I mean, it changed my entire life. Like it changed my whole life. And she helped me make sense of what I went through, because when you're growing up, especially if you grow up in a situation where there's addiction in the family, there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of secrecy. There's a lot of, we don't talk about that. And so I grew up seeing things and I'd be like, nah, I know that ain't right. But like nobody else would validate that, right? So, so I grew up like kind of questioning myself a lot, not trusting my own experience or what I saw. And so therapy really helped me kind of break down those walls and put into perspective not only what I was going through, but really helped me kind of heal my relationship with that family member that was dealing with those issues. So, now I have an extensive toolkit that I use when I'm feeling anxious, or if I feel, like maybe a depressive episode coming on, I'm able to manage that. And I think even if you don't have diagnosed, mental health issues, I think it's really important if you feel like you're overwhelmed or if you feel like you're kind of floating in life, or your relationships are not looking the way you want them to look, or your relationship with yourself is not the way you want it to look. Therapy can help. And, your therapist is not there to judge you. They're really there to help you just have an understanding, to give you the tools that you need to accomplish what you want.
Right. I like that. I like that it's opened up in the Black community, and that now it's great. Everywhere you look, Black people are embracing the importance of therapy and mental health. I like that group you said. Therapy
for Black girls. Yes, that's a wonderful resource. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say, venture to say that as Black people, we probably need it more so than anyone else because, when you go through trauma, it can change the expression of your genes. Like
Mm,
people don't realize that.
no.
It's called epigenetics. You can look it up. It can
Mm,
literally change the expression of your genes and your children henceforth. And as a
mm.
people, we have gone through a lot of trauma and we
Yeah.
continue to experience a lot of it, and
Mhm.
I think that I'm so happy that we're moving more towards being accepting of that as a people, because I will be so excited to see what this next generation does now that
Mhm.
they've embraced mental health and making sure that they take care of it.
Yeah, and the healing that has to take place, right, for
Yeah.
all of us, right? And
Mhm.
therapy could support because even with me, I pushed it all down because I was just going through. I have to get this job, I have to do this
Yes.
career, I have to be this kind of woman, I have to do all these things. And so I just pushed through. And so I felt that I was gonna make a difference as a Black woman and I was gonna do all these things, right?
Mhm.
And you come to now, and everything that happened was just devastating. I think it was the first time I really felt, really felt it and acknowledged the pain, right?
Yeah.
And acknowledged that there needed to be a healing, and
Yes.
being able to acknowledge that then supports you in moving forward and healing all of the trauma, because that was a lot of trauma that was just pushed down in
Yeah.
order to just continue with the goal that I was going for. So I am really excited about like therapy just becoming universal, that
Yeah.
we all can go to therapy in our communities and that we are embracing it.
Yeah, and you made a good point. I mean, because I think that's kind of a cultural coping mechanism that we have to keep going, right? Because are
mm,
strong as a people, right? And we're just like, we build on our identity over all the amazing accomplishments we have, the things that we have overcome. And sometimes we'll say, my ancestors, they were able to overcome this. I should be able to, do this thing.
correct.
But, like we gotta be able to cut ourselves some slack, give ourselves some grace sometimes. Like, and so, it kind of manifests into like just feeling like you need to keep going, and you're not taking care of yourself and you're
Exactly.
not, filling up that tank. Yeah.
And that's why at this point I talk about grace and ease, because
I love
I
that.
now know that it didn't take all of that though, right?
Yeah.
But you know how hindsight is, right?
Hmm.
And what I've learned is really around the being and the doing and understanding,
Yes.
right? That you don't have to just do all the time and push, take that moment. And then that brings into mind too the being and the relaxing and the meditating and watching your thoughts, and all of those practices are very powerful in supporting us and not having to always do the beating, that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's the spirituality part, and having spiritual tools and things that can support us without the stress of it all. Because as you mentioned earlier, for you, it was stress, right?
Mhm.
And once you found a way to handle the stress, the blood pressure came down, right? Ways of being supporting you in bringing your pressure down and getting to a level.
Mhm.
And then I think that could also go with how we handle mental health. What things can we use, right, to support us? And you've been able to do that with, as you say, your toolkit for
Mhm.
supporting you. So I really appreciate that. And I hope that more and more people can find the support and recognize, I think too, do people sometimes not even recognize that they're depressed, because some
No.
of the action, some of the
No.
things, right? You might not call it depression. You might, and might just say, oh, I'm just not feeling good. Or
Yeah.
as you said, to our nature is that like we're strong people, we can go. I think I can remember telling my daughter, Black people don't kill themselves. We are too strong for that, right?
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like, That's pretty crazy to think that just you can't do because you're a Black person, you don't kill yourself, and you
Yeah.
have to like struggle and take the fight. But
Yeah. Yeah. And we just don't know. That's the thing. Like we just don't know. We haven't, economically in the past, we haven't had access to it.
right.
And we relied so heavily on religion because it's what has got us through. And
Mhm.
religion is important. It does have its place, but there are just certain things that um you have to do to take care of your health, and it took me a long time to admit, that I had it,
Yeah.
to not have shame around it, and then
Mhm.
to treat myself appropriately when I felt it coming on. So because I'm very high functioning, like I'm a person that I'm going to get it done. I have 50 million projects going on, at one time. Even if
Mhm.
I am feeling depressed, right? I'll go and do my project, work on my business, and then go cry in the bed. Like it's
Yeah.
been like that sometimes, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I had to learn that, Radiance, if you had the flu, would you be pushing yourself to go and do this? Would you be, kind of judging yourself for having the flu? Well, that's the same thing where if you're experiencing depression or if you're experiencing high anxiety, you are experiencing an illness and you need to stop and take care of yourself until you get on better footing, better ground. Hmm.
Right. Recognizing it as an illness.
Yes.
I like that, right? Because
Hmm.
that's it. Recognizing it as that, then you will do something different
Hmm.
about it, right? So
Absolutely.
that's really good. I'm really excited about the things that you've done and the way you've taken care of yourself and how you've used the spiritual practices and spirituality to support you throughout this time.
Yeah.
I know you have your own business, My Curated Career. Talk
Hmm.
about how you started that business and what you're offering
Okay.
in
How I started it. I started it in June of 2020, so it's still pretty new.
okay.
I knew that I wanted to have some type of kind of coaching business on the side. That's my passion, and I wasn't quite sure whether I wanted to do it full time or part time. So I just started the business, and what I offer is career coaching for professionals in the area. My style is a little different than maybe traditional career coaches, so I'm really looking at mindset and not necessarily fixing your resume. So a lot of times I have clients that come to me. Um, Most of my clients, I say 90% of my clients that come to me are people that are talented. They have lots of skills, but they're unhappy with where they are with their career. They have no idea what they want to do next or how they want to get there. And I would say that's my specialty. I help people get clarity on that. And my approach is really from a holistic perspective,
Mhm.
because your job is just one part of your life. And, you can't make decisions about your job without thinking about how it fits in with all the other pieces of your life. If you really want to be happy and fulfilled.
Mhm.
The thing that I noticed, with jobs and people changing jobs is sometimes the thing is that people are unhappy in other ways and the job
Mhm.
seems like the best way to fix it, right?
Okay.
I'm unhappy, I'm gonna blame it on the job because that's the thing that I can fix, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes I've run into with my clients where it's not even necessarily the job, it's that confidence. Like I told you, I dealt with earlier in my career, lack of
Mhm.
confidence or mindset, right?
Mhm.
Looking
Mhm.
past their limitations and understanding that they can accomplish what they want. They just need to start putting a plan in place and kind of trust the process. So I coach people on that. Um, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. Most
Mhm.
so far, all of my clients have been Black women. It's like they've been one, and they've all been referral based. They keep referring, different friends and what have you. And I really enjoy working with Black women, especially young Black women. Trying to navigate through the corporate world. It really fulfills me.
Mhm. That's really cool. Yeah, and the corporate world is a big old world, right? Where you can have a career, and it's nice if you have support in
Yeah.
really navigating through that whole maze, because there is a lot to being in corporate America.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say would be share your top three spiritual practices that
Mm-hmm.
you say would be your go-to? Here we talk about building a spiritual toolkit,
Mm-hmm.
and many things we found can be in your spiritual toolkit. And sometimes people go to the this prayer meditation, but on the show I found people who bring like a gratitude practice or an
Mm-hmm.
appreciation practice, and I like hearing the different things that people do as go
Mm-hmm.
to support them spiritually.
Okay. Top three. So, I've already spoke about meditation.
Right.
Certainly that. I've spoke about Reiki and mindfulness, but I'll add some other tools that I use. Like those are my top three, but I'll add some other tools. One is tapping,
Tapping.
tapping,
Oh,
tapping.
okay. Talk
Yeah,
about what is that? Talk a little bit about it. Explain for people who
tapping
might
is a
not know
technique that you use where you tap different places, on your body, different meridian points, right?
already. Mhm,
While making certain affirmative statements, right?
mhm. Okay.
Um, and the idea is it's supposed to move the energy within you. It's supposed to move that negative energy through your body and kind of, bring in those emotions and move them out. So you
Mhm,
could, a tapping exercise might look like you do go in a certain sequence, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
you might start by saying, even though I feel lonely, right?
mhm,
I know I am loved. Even though I'm feeling lonely, even though I'm feeling sad, even though I feel I have nobody, I know that I am loved. I know that I am safe. And you keep saying that so that you
mhm,
bring up those emotions and then you move them out. Because like I said
mhm.
before, those emotions sit in your body, they fester and they turn into disease.
Okay.
It's
Wow.
plain and simple. Yeah,
Okay.
so
I've
if
heard of it,
anybody's
but
ever interested, when I was going through a really hard time,
mhm,
kind of managing through a breakup, I would use tapping when my emotions would just get so overwhelmed. I would go right on YouTube, type in
mhm.
the emotion, anger, tapping, you know,
Ah,
frustrated, tapping, right? And I would go through, and I would feel the difference. I would really feel like it just kind of came out of me.
mhm.
Another thing is journaling.
Right. Okay.
Um, Journaling just to get your thoughts out without judging what you're writing or how you're writing,
Mhm,
um, is, studies show it can really change how you feel about a situation, and it can change your emotions and your energy around it. It's a great tool.
mhm.
One tool that I've used, and actually both of these tools, tapping and journaling, and particularly this tool I'm about to share, I got from my therapist. But it's a cognitive behavioral therapy tool called ABCD, right? And it's
Right.
all about reframing your thoughts. So if you have something that happens that makes you really upset, right? The A stands for like what activated that situation, right? Oh, my
Mhm,
coworker made a snarky comment in front of everyone in the meeting. And then
mhm,
B stands for the beliefs. So really focus
mhm.
you to think about, to move past that emotion and think about, well, what beliefs about myself is this tapping on, right? Because a lot people can't hurt your feelings unless you allow them to, right?
Absolutely.
If
Right.
somebody, I know for sure I'm an intelligent person. So if somebody
Mhm.
told me that I was stupid, I look at them like, but I have insecurities about other things, right? And so if
Right.
they touch on
Right.
that insecurity, that's going
Right.
to be a whole different, that's going to be a whole different conversation,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it's really examining what beliefs did it bring up, and then C stands for consequences. So it
Mm.
kind of forces you to be mindful and to think about, okay, now that these beliefs are swirling, what are the consequences of that? I feel frustrated. My neck is tight. I have a headache, that type
Mm.
of thing. And then the last one is disputes. So you
Mm.
come up with alternative explanations to dispute some of those limiting beliefs. So
Mm.
I personally like that structure, because sometimes people don't like journaling because they feel like, well, I'm just venting and writing all over the place. So if you like
Mhm.
a little bit more structure and you want to be able to process something that has, created negative emotions or feelings within you, that's a really great tool. You can just Google ABCD cognitive behavioral therapy, or ABCD CBT. And
Mm,
there's so many worksheets and videos out there that explain that technique.
cool. Well, really has been a pleasure and great having you here. How can people get in touch with you, Radiance?
They can go to my website, mycuratedcareer.com. I'm on Instagram, My Curated Career. Please follow, please sign up for the email list. And if you sign up for the email list and follow me and mention this show, then I will send out my ebook for free to the first 25 people that do that. My ebook is called The Ultimate Career Mindset Toolkit. And it's all about what I spoke about before. It's less about specifically how do I get this job, how do I job search, but how do I overcome limiting beliefs that make me feel stuck at work, that make me feel like I don't have confidence, that make me feel like I'm just kind of floating through my career without intention. It's a workbook with exercises to help people get clear on what they want and where they want to go. So it's a great toolkit. It has affirmations in there, another spiritual practice. So if you follow me on Instagram, and you also sign up for my email list and let me know that you saw me on Conversations with Rev G. First 25 people, I'll send it to them for free.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. And I have some things I wrote down too to look into. So I really love it when I can learn new things also. So I will
Awesome.
definitely be in touch with you, and good luck with everything. I know everything will work out. I'm following you, so I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you, Reverend G. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye. So thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. I'm here every Monday night on WEMS Radio from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And tonight, something that I'd like to leave you with for the mindful moment is about being present and being present to what's going on in the moment. It's really important for us to just stop sometimes and relax and understand where we are without thinking about the future or the past, and getting present to what's going on with us. And in being present, we can experience more of what's happening in our life. You know, we're on the journey and we want to be in the journey and experience the journey. So I'd like to invite you to focus on being present and in the moment. So I'm Reverend G, and you can find me on Instagram as Rev Grenetta, and on Facebook and YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason. And join me here every Monday night for spiritual conversations so that I can support you in finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. Have a great week.